My husband stole my grandmother's jewelry and sold it to buy cryptocurrency he kept secret from me. While I was trusting him with our finances, he was gambling away my inheritance. What I did next didn't just empty his crypto wallet, it emptied his entire life. I met my husband Kevin at a friend's party when we were both 26. He was charming, funny, worked in tech, said all the right things, made me feel like the most important person in the room. We dated for a year before he proposed. The wedding was small but perfect. We moved into a nice apartment downtown and started building what I thought was our life together. Kevin was good with money, or at least that's what he told me. He worked in finance for a tech startup and was always talking about investments and market trends. I worked as a teacher, didn't make as much as him, but I contributed what I could. Kevin suggested we combine our finances, said it would be easier to manage everything together. That we were a team now and teams shared everything. I agreed, gave him access to all my accounts, trusted him completely. But looking back, there were signs, small things I should have noticed. Kevin was obsessed with his phone, always checking some app. When I'd ask what he was looking at, he'd say work stuff. Stock market things I wouldn't understand. He started staying up late at night on his computer, said he was researching investments, that he was trying to build our future. I believed him because I wanted to believe him. He also became controlling about money, started questioning my purchases. Why did I buy that? Did I really need this? Meanwhile, he'd come home with expensive gadgets and tech equipment. When I'd ask about it, he'd say it was for work, that his company reimbursed him, that I shouldn't worry about it. He made me feel guilty for spending money on basic things while he bought whatever he wanted. My grandmother passed away when I'd been married to Kevin for about 2 years. She left me her jewelry collection. Beautiful pieces she'd collected over her lifetime. Antique rings, necklaces, bracelets. Some were worth a lot of money, but most were valuable because they were hers. Because they connected me to her. I kept them in a jewelry box in our bedroom. Would take them out sometimes just to remember her. Kevin knew how much they meant to me, knew they were the last physical connection I had to my grandmother. Knew I'd never sell them. Which is why what he did was even worse. It started when I noticed one of my necklaces was missing, a gold chain with a small diamond pendant. My grandmother wore it every day. I looked everywhere for it. Tore apart the bedroom. Checked every drawer. Asked Kevin if he'd seen it. He said no. Suggested maybe I'd misplaced it, that it would turn up. It didn't turn up. Then a few weeks later, another piece went missing, a bracelet, then a ring, then another necklace. Within 3 months, half my grandmother's jewelry was gone. I was panicking. Thought maybe we'd been robbed. Kevin said we should check with the apartment management. See if anyone else had reported thefts. They hadn't. I started watching our bedroom more carefully. Started noticing Kevin going through my jewelry box when he thought I wasn't paying attention. One day, I came home early from work and caught him red-handed. He was holding one of my rings, looking at it closely. When he saw me, he dropped it back in the box. Said he was just looking, that he'd never really paid attention to my grandmother's collection before. Something about his face told me he was lying. I started checking my jewelry box daily, documenting what was there, taking photos. And I noticed more pieces disappearing. Always when Kevin had been home alone. I confronted him again, asked directly if he'd taken anything. He got defensive, said he couldn't believe I'd accuse him of stealing, that he was hurt I didn't trust him, that maybe I was being paranoid. He turned it around on me so effectively that I actually apologized. But I couldn't shake the feeling something was wrong. So, I did something I'd never done before. I went through Kevin's things, his computer, his phone, his email, and I found everything. Kevin had been selling my jewelry, piece by piece, taking it to pawn shops and jewelers across the city, getting cash and immediately converting it to cryptocurrency. Bitcoin, Ethereum, Random coins I'd never heard of. He'd been doing this for months, had sold over 15 pieces, worth tens of thousands of dollars. Money he'd gambled on crypto, hoping to get rich quick. I found records of all the transactions, screenshots of his crypto accounts, messages with dealers. He'd been living a completely secret financial life, and he'd funded it by stealing from me, by selling my grandmother's jewelry without my knowledge or permission, by gambling away the last physical things I had to remember her by. I also found out our joint savings account was nearly empty. Kevin had been transferring money out for months, using it to buy more crypto. We had almost nothing left. While I was working and contributing to what I thought was our future, he was stealing from both our accounts and from my personal possessions to feed his gambling addiction. That's when I decided I wouldn't be his victim. I wasn't going to let Kevin destroy me financially and emotionally. I was going to fight back. And I was going to make sure he lost everything he'd taken from me and more. The first thing I did was document everything. I took screenshots of his crypto accounts, his transaction history, the messages with pawn shops. I downloaded bank statements showing the money he'd moved. I took photos of my nearly empty jewelry box. I built a complete file of evidence showing exactly what Kevin had done. Then I called a lawyer, explained the situation. They said Kevin had committed theft, that selling my property without permission was a crime, that emptying our joint account without my knowledge was financial abuse. We could pursue this criminally or civilly. I wanted both. I wanted Kevin to face every consequence possible. I also called my best friend Maria, told her everything. She was furious, offered to help however she could. I asked her to help me move out without Kevin knowing. We planned it for a Saturday when Kevin would be at some crypto conference. Maria and her boyfriend would help me pack and get out while he was gone. But before I moved out, I did something else. I consulted with a tech-savvy friend who understood cryptocurrency, explained what Kevin had done, asked if there was a legal way to access his crypto accounts and recover my money. They said if I could prove the crypto was purchased with stolen funds, I could potentially get a court order to seize the accounts. It would require lawyers and legal proceedings, but it was possible. I also discovered something that made everything even worse. Kevin hadn't just stolen my jewelry and our savings. He'd taken out credit cards in my name, run up debt I knew nothing about, tens of thousands of dollars in charges for more crypto purchases and tech equipment. My credit was destroyed. I'd had no idea. He'd been having the statements sent to a P.O. box I didn't know about. This wasn't just theft. This was identity fraud. Kevin had systematically stolen my identity, my possessions, and our joint assets to feed his gambling addiction. And he'd been planning to keep it hidden as long as possible. I spent 2 weeks preparing, gathering evidence, meeting with lawyers, opening a new bank account in just my name, changing my passwords, protecting my identity. Kevin had no idea. He thought everything was fine, thought I'd never find out what he'd done. The day I moved out, Kevin was at his conference. Maria and her boyfriend showed up at 8 in the morning. We packed all my stuff, took everything that was mine. I left divorce papers on the kitchen table along with a printed copy of all the evidence I'd gathered. Every screenshot, every bank statement, every receipt from the pawn shops. I wanted him to know exactly what I'd found, wanted him to know his secret life was over. I also left a letter, told him I'd filed for divorce, that I'd reported the theft to police, that I'd be pursuing legal action to recover everything he'd stolen, that I'd secured court orders, freezing his crypto accounts pending investigation, that every coin he'd bought with my money and my grandmother's jewelry was now frozen. He couldn't access any of it. Then I left, moved into a new apartment, changed my phone number, blocked Kevin everywhere, and waited for him to realize his entire world had collapsed. Kevin called my old number about 100 times that Saturday, left voicemails that went from confused to angry to desperate. By the time he figured out my new number through a mutual friend, I had my lawyer send him a cease and desist. All communication had to go through lawyers. He couldn't contact me directly, and waited for him to realize his entire world had collapsed. Kevin called my old number about 100 times that Saturday, left voicemails that went from confused to angry to desperate. By the time he figured out my new number through a mutual friend, I had my lawyer send him a cease and desist. All communication had to go through lawyers. He couldn't contact me directly. But Kevin did something I didn't expect. He showed up at my parents' house, demanded to talk to me, said I was overreacting, that we could work this out. My dad almost called the police before Kevin left, but not before screaming that I'd ruined his life, that I'd stolen his money, that the crypto was his and I had no right to freeze it. The legal process took months. My lawyer filed criminal charges for theft and identity fraud, also filed a civil suit to recover the value of the stolen jewelry and the money Kevin had taken from our joint accounts. The prosecutor was very interested in the identity fraud, said it was a serious felony. Kevin was looking at potential jail time. Kevin hired a lawyer who tried to argue the jewelry was marital property, that Kevin had a right to sell it. My lawyer destroyed that argument, showed that the jewelry was inherited, was my separate property before the marriage, that Kevin had no legal right to touch it. The judge agreed, ruled that Kevin had committed theft, ordered him to pay restitution for the full value of every piece he'd sold. The crypto accounts were trickier. Kevin's lawyer argued the crypto was his separate property, that he'd bought it with his own money. My lawyer showed the bank records, proved the crypto was purchased with stolen funds, funds taken from our joint account and from selling my jewelry. The judge ordered the crypto accounts liquidated. The money would go toward paying restitution and covering the fraudulent credit card debt Kevin had created in my name. Kevin's crypto portfolio had actually gone up in value. He'd gambled right on a few coins and made significant gains, which meant when it was liquidated, there was more than enough to cover what he owed me. The rest went to paying legal fees and the IRS. Kevin ended up with nothing, lost every coin, lost everything he'd stolen and gambled with. But it got worse for Kevin. The criminal charges moved forward. He ended up pleading guilty to theft and identity fraud to avoid trial. Got sentenced to 2 years probation, community service, and a permanent record. He also lost his job. His employer found out about the criminal charges and fired him. Said they couldn't have someone convicted of financial crimes working in their finance department. His reputation in his social circle was destroyed. All his crypto friends found out he'd stolen from his wife to fund his trades. Nobody wanted to associate with him. The divorce was finalized within 6 months. I got everything: the apartment, the remaining savings, and the satisfaction of knowing Kevin had lost it all. The last I heard, Kevin was working some retail job trying to rebuild his life, living with a roommate in a cheap apartment. His dreams of getting rich off crypto were gone. His marriage was gone. His career was gone, all because he'd been too greedy and too stupid to understand that stealing from your wife has consequences. It's been 18 months since I left Kevin. 18 months since I discovered he'd been stealing from me to feed his crypto gambling addiction. And my life is so much better now. I'm financially stable. My credit is slowly recovering. I'm in therapy working through the betrayal and learning to trust again. I replaced some of my grandmother's jewelry with money from the restitution. Not all of it. Some pieces were truly irreplaceable, but I have a few things now that remind me of her, that connect me to her memory. Kevin tried to take that away from me, tried to gamble away my inheritance for his own gain, but he failed. What I learned from this experience is that financial abuse is real and devastating. Kevin didn't hit me or yell at me, but he stole from me systematically, used my trust to fund his own selfish desires, left me with debt and destroyed credit. That's abuse, and it's not okay. I also learned that you don't have to accept being a victim. When I found out what Kevin did, I could have just filed for divorce and walked away, could have let him keep the crypto, could have tried to move on quietly, but I didn't. I fought back, used the legal system to hold him accountable, made sure he faced consequences for every crime he committed. And I don't regret it. Some people think I went too far. That freezing his crypto accounts and pursuing criminal charges was vindictive. That I should have just taken my share in the divorce and moved on. But Kevin didn't just break my heart, he stole my property, committed identity fraud, and gambled away our future. He deserved everything that happened to him. Revenge wasn't about hurting Kevin, it was about finally choosing myself, about refusing to let someone destroy me financially and emotionally without consequences. About using every legal tool available to recover what was stolen and rebuild my life. Kevin thought he was smarter than me, thought I'd never figure out his secret crypto life. He was wrong. And he paid for that mistake with everything. To anyone watching this who's discovered their partner is financially abusing them, hiding money, or stealing from joint accounts, here's what I want you to know. Document everything. Talk to a lawyer immediately. Protect your assets and your credit, and don't be afraid to pursue legal action. You deserve to be protected, you deserve justice, and you deserve to rebuild your life free from someone who sees you as nothing more than a source of funding for their selfish desires. Kevin sold my grandmother's jewelry for crypto, so I took every coin, every dollar, and every ounce of security he had, and I used it to rebuild the life he tried to destroy. That's not revenge. That's justice. Do you think I went too far, or did he deserve more? Tell me in the comments. Subscribe if you believe stealing from your partner should come with real consequences.